Hello, hello, good night, Anna. One more time for these live sessions on the Purpose Ages Summit. And how are you today?
I'm great. I'm great. It's our third live session. This one is
Correct.
focused on purpose and trauma, and it's a little bit traumatic because the time of the session was wrong. So we're streaming, and we realized that maybe people might not be here for this streaming. They might see us later, but we're here regardless. So that's what's going on.
Yes, so it's the third time we're going live, and so far, technically, everything has worked out well. And we're also in this learning process of how to best offer these contents to our audience. And as you were saying tonight, we're speaking about purpose and trauma, which is a very core topic to the whole exploration of purpose. And before we go into the actual topic and the summary of the five sessions from today, would you like to help us to center and to open up and to tune into that active listening for us to come to this discussion with an open heart and open mind?
Absolutely. Yes. So let's start taking 3 deep breaths. Feeling our feet on the ground, our spine straight, connecting with our body in the here and now. Let's close our eyes for a moment and open our hearts and minds to visualize for a moment that we're standing at a crossroads. We can imagine that the path behind us is our past, marked by many events that we could call perhaps traumatic or painful, as well as many other events, joyful, wonderful, whatever it is for you in your life. And regardless of the past, we do have a path that has a crossroads where we can choose. We can choose a path of healing and facing our pains and our shadows and our trauma, which will invariably lead to purpose, or taking a comfortable path of not facing this and with the consequences that this brings. And let's imagine that we have all the support we need to choose the path of purpose, the path of facing our pain, facing our challenges, facing our trauma, with that bringing us breakthroughs and all manner of learning so that we can bring out our gifts and the true expression of our being in this life. So, however, this visualization landed with you, let's take 3 deep breaths. And let's come back in the here and now.
Thank you, Anna. And as we go deeper into the contents of the Purpose CG Summit, I can also feel how we are going deeper into this connection with the topic of purpose itself and with the practices that we are proposing to start these live discussions, probably after long days of work for many of us, and just having a moment to come back to ourselves and focus on what we have at hand, which is hopefully this live stream for some people there online. So, we have discussed purpose and authenticity, purpose and work, and today we're going to talk about purpose and trauma. And I would like to ask you, Anna, when you were crafting all this content and putting it into categories, why did you feel called to add one day focused on trauma?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, the topic emerged in my conversations with the sages. It was there on the table. It was impossible not to see. And I think that people who are committed to their path of purpose, they have in some way embraced the trauma, and they have become courageous in both naming the word, naming the trauma and not seeing it as something out there, but something in here that we need to address. And there's the beauty of that. Felt comforting and also important to put on the table and in this summit. And also, I want to acknowledge that there's other summits that are entirely focused on trauma that also influenced me, like Thomas Hubel and his collective trauma summit. Every single year I tune in and listen, and interestingly they have more content on purpose, and the bridge between these two, trauma and purpose, is becoming even stronger in my mind, clearer in my mind. And I want to also name and acknowledge Meredith Miller, one of our sages, who is explicitly working on that bridge. And that's her tagline: from trauma, bridging trauma with purpose. And so ever since I saw her tagline and I spoke with her, but also with the other sages, and not, in fact, not only of this day and theme, they brought up trauma. You'll notice that trauma is present throughout. I wouldn't say in every single session, but in many of the sessions.
Yes, and this reminds me one of the quotes from the from the talks from today, the sessions from today, that talked about how purpose can be very close and your gifts can be very close to your wounds. And by
Mhm.
getting closer to the wounds and looking at them and seeing them for what they are, we're also getting closer to the place where we can clearly see what is our gift and the gift that we have accomplished or the gift that we have earned through transmuting and going through certain traumatic experiences as
Mhm.
well. So, you have already mentioned one of our five sages of today. That would be Meredith Miller. So, to start with this summary, would you like to start with her and her bridging trauma and purpose talk from today?
Actually, let's start with Laura,
Mm,
who's a Mexican woman, dear friend. Laura from Mexico, she is part of that collective trauma summit that happens every year with
mm,
Thomas Hubel, and I met her recently. And her work in collective trauma is impressive.
mm.
And she herself is a woman of purpose. So that's one of the main reasons I invited her in. And it was fascinating to hear her story, where she wrote a thesis all about how her country, Mexico, needs a therapy session. Isn't that
Mm.
great? The whole
Yes.
country. And I think, yeah, were you going to say something?
Yeah, just that probably every country does at this
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Um, and so it's very, very clear that the moment we open our eyes and become more conscious, we realize that we need to go on a healing journey, both as individuals and as collectives. And the beautiful thing which she mentions is that we are blessed with so many tools, so much wisdom. And she spoke a lot about ancestral wisdom. And I know that her work embraces um, the that many modalities and plant medicine and just acknowledging the elders of her own culture and ancestry, how they also contribute to healing, and they have so many tools for us. But also the ancestors of the world, I'm thinking of the Eastern cultures that brought us yoga, meditation, mindfulness, etc. I couldn't name all of these ancestral lineages that have so much to give us at this time of healing. So
Yeah,
she
and this like cradle of civilizations knowledge.
exactly. And Laura also speaks, on big terms of our collective trauma, particularly of colonialism, which I think is really important. I think we're ready to talk about this, to unpack not only our individual wounds but also the wounds of our whole continents and cultures and how that has impacted us. And we do this also to retrieve our life force, to retrieve our souls from centuries of repressed pain and silence, because it's not been easy to talk about certain things, but we're starting to talk about it, and there's huge healing in that.
Great, Anna. And I would like to add something that comes from my own experience of watching these sessions and these talks. And on one hand, it has to do with people who are sensitive and who are open hearted and who are deeply empathetic. And I consider myself to be like that, might need some time to process a lot of this information,
Yeah.
more than the actual information that it's being provided in the talks. It's about the life experiences of all the people who were openly sharing their vulnerabilities and sharing their different kinds of trauma they have gone through and that they have managed to heal to a certain degree. And also how this makes me think that in a way today our lives and sorry our sessions were more focused on healing trauma than trauma itself. They were
Yeah.
focused a lot on how can we approach it more than what is trauma or how do we get traumatized or what kind of events can be traumatizing. It's more about how we heal whatever we feel in our body that comes from a place of trauma.
Mhm.
So I find it really interesting. And obviously, things like plant medicine, shamanism, alternative therapies, connection to the earth come very much in line with this topic of healing our trauma.
Absolutely. Yes, it is very much showing. People have generously shared their healing journeys to demystify that, we need to hide this, and we don't need to hide this. We can openly talk about it now, and it's not taboo to say, yes, I have faced some trauma, and here's the gift that comes from having healed it. So that's a constant throughout all of these sessions and beyond, not just today's theme.
Yes, and obviously, trauma is so evident that even if we would like to try to hide it, it's just out there already.
Hmm.
And we are talking about collective traumas from definitely different colonialism processes and now decolonization processes that are going deeply also within certain cultures, and the acknowledgement that we carry trauma that might not even feel like it has anything to do directly with us, and it's something that we have inherited also through our ancestries and the history of the lands that we stand on.
Hmm. Yes.
Yes.
I just want to take a moment and say hello to Luis, who's here listening. Thank you. Anybody who's here, please send us a comment, say hello. This is very encouraging. Even though the links were wrong initially, people are showing up, so that's great to know.
Yes. Thank you, Luis. I'm so happy to have you again today. Like, I love this discipline and the support, this constant support that we're receiving from you. And we also have a comment from Luzca, Luz Karima, part of the Purpose Ages team on the Revision Academy. Good night, Purpose Ages from Colombia. Nice to have audience also here in Colombia. Okay, Anna. So would you like to continue with the next of our sages in order with the agenda, or is there something else you would like to add about
No,
Laura Calderon's? Laura Calderon's. So next in today's agenda, we had Frida Nixdorf
yeah.
from the US, and the title of her session is being available to meet the grief as it arises. So introducing the topic of grief.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and when I recollected and remembered what we spoke about and looked at my notes, the first thing that came to mind when I saw that title is grief is the most natural response to trauma. It's the most natural thing. And when we are able to meet grief as it arises, that's such a beautiful opportunity for healing. I wonder who here, listening or viewing, can relate to this. Whenever I cry, I'm so grateful because I know that it's like a cleansing moment.
Yes.
And what a gift. And what she's referring to here, grief, it has to do with everything that's happening in the world. Frida is very attuned to the ecological devastation that is happening in the world. She's part of the deep ecology community and the work that reconnects from Joanna Macy, beautiful elder. If you don't know about her, please look her up, Joanna Macy. So she talks about how communities are not always prepared and trained to support grief, to support trauma as it arises. And even though there's more information out there about becoming more trauma informed, it's still challenging when there's these strong emotions that come up in communities and organizations. There's often the tendency to hide it, to put it aside, to shun the person, like horribilize the person instead of leaning in and seeing what is going on here and how is this an expression of the system, and let's learn together from this. I've certainly faced that situation with communities, the inability to address let alone address conflict, but like even less address trauma, address grief. But I think there are some communities that are becoming more knowledgeable, more resilient in that respect, and more capable of holding space for grief and for trauma as it arises. And the beautiful thing is that when you hold space for another in their grief and their trauma, you're also giving yourself permission to be with your emotions, to feel your emotions. And that is the way through to heal.
Yes, and there's something I would like to highlight from Frida's talk, and is that at some point she talks about how we can feel grief at the same time that we're feeling joy and feeling so many other emotions simultaneously. And I think this is such a relevant point because we're always feeling a mix of emotions.
Yeah.
The feelings are very rarely just one presenting itself. We always have this combination of things going on. And grief is also a big part of the healing of trauma process, because you start also grieving identities, grieving old parts of yourself when you start healing trauma. Stop identifying yourself with a diagnosis, with an accident, with a past experience that generated imprints in our feelings, And when we are healing those, we're also letting go of a part of ourselves in a way.
Mm.
So yeah, really interesting how she puts it, that you can
Yes.
be grieving and you can be joyful at the same time.
Yes. Yes. It's beautiful. I want to welcome the new people who are joining. Welcome, Jill. You're also been really here with us. I thank you for your presence, Jill. Carmen Delia, welcome from Ecuador. So thank you for being here. And I want to emphasize the importance of community to talk about these
Mhm.
things, right? And Jill is mentioning it here. It has been a day of deep learning because if you have
Mm,
heard or seen the sessions, they are deep. They really,
yeah, they
it
are.
it touched me deeply to hear all of this, and I did it in over
Mm,
time. So people who took in all of this today, congratulations. It's a lot to
yes.
take in, and if you haven't, take your time because it is a lot, and at the same time, how wonderful to expand our capacity to be with the fullness of human experience.
Absolutely. And this is why I was also saying earlier that it does take space and space in our hearts to take in these stories. And this is also an invitation for people to access the premium offering that we're making so that they can go and hear these talks several times if they want to really connect to these sages' stories and to the wisdom that is really coming through them, because it's their own life. They are not reading scripts, they are not reading on bullet points on PowerPoints. They are really just speaking from their inner wisdom,
Yeah.
all about their life experience with trauma. So there's that invitation for people there. And definitely thanks to those who are connecting live. We can really feel your energy coming through. So, would you like to continue, Anna, with our third
Yeah.
sage and our third speaker from today? That would be Carrie FG.
Hmm.
And she also has a very insightful talk that is called Life Design Based on Nature Principles.
Hmm. Yes, yes, and the title doesn't overtly speak about trauma, and if you hear it, if you listen to it, you'll we have the privilege of hearing her story of healing, of childhood trauma and being a survivor, also of physical illness, and how the earth and her properties has helped her heal and regenerate herself, is how she calls it,
Mm-hmm.
and also design her life and designing landscapes. So it's just beautiful because it's a continuum of healing and turning to the earth for healing, and then being inspired by the earth and nature to design her life, help other people design their life, similar to what we do in Life Revision, and then design landscapes. So it's just so beautiful that there we see an example of how the wound is so close to the gift and so close to the medicine, meaning so close to purpose, and what she's
Yes.
contributing so beautifully with her book and her school and her business of landscape design.
Yes, and she speaks a lot about connecting with nature, as you have just introduced. And beyond her speaking about it, I really enjoyed the way that she embodies this connection with nature. And she talks about how so many different activities that you can do out in nature can really make you feel and connect with the feeling that we are deeply supported by the earth. And
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
this talk, you both speak a lot about earth having this motherly, supportive energy
Mhm.
that is really foundational for healing, and how we can go back to the foundations of Mother Earth to remember that we are somebody's holding us, and something is holding us, the planet itself, it's holding that process of healing. So this really comes through her energy as well.
Absolutely. And, this comes up again later, surely, with Rebecca Wildbear
Mm.
on our day 6 in purpose and spirituality, because we're entering also the spiritual realm. And I think many people who work on trauma, I'm pretty sure they would say that part of the healing of trauma is accessing our spirituality. And the earth has so much of that spiritual energy. Maybe not in, if in the conventional sense, but there's so many spiritual paths that connect us back to the earth, and more I see paths that reconnect us. So yeah, that's beautiful how you said it, the earth and her motherly qualities, and how we can see nature as a holding space, as a resource for our healing.
Great, Anna. Thanks a lot. And Carmen is asking if we can share the link to our premium offer, and she's connecting from LinkedIn. So what we would do is that we will add the comments once this live event has ended,
Mhm.
and we will add the link there so you can join it. This week is $69. The live access to all the talks, 30 plus talks, and also a purpose discovery journey that will be supported by communications by email with prompts, with a purpose tea time exercises. Maybe it's a good time for you to introduce to our audience, Anna, what the purpose tea time is about, so that they can also find some enthusiasm to join this process.
Yes, yes, because there's, as Stefania said, 30 plus sessions. You might want to either revisit the sessions in a later date or take them in more slowly. So where the premium offer is taking you on a reflection journey with journaling prompts, and then the exercise of purpose tea time is something that we have envisioned. It's, what if every week we took tea, we took time to have tea with our purpose. And so we're going
Mm-hmm.
to put together a playlist of music, and based on the prompts you get of each one of the talks, you can choose one of the journaling prompts and then spend from 30 minutes to 60 minutes drinking your favorite tea, listening to this evocative, inspiring music, and connect with your purpose. And what a great way to bring it to life, to connect deeper with it, to ask it questions, to ask yourself deeper questions, and um, build a stronger relationship with your purpose.
Thank you, Anna, for that invitation and clarification. And before we move on to summarizing the last two talks of today, I would like to come through with Luz Karime's comments. She is commenting in Spanish a little bit of her own life experience
Mhm.
and how going through trauma, she could really start to value herself and see her self worth a lot clearer. And that her reflections of being supported by spirituality and ancestral medicines helped her to evolve into her life's purpose. So, here we have another life experience from the
Yes.
audience that connects some of the frameworks and some of the topics that we have already discussed until now.
Yes, and it's actually a great segue, Luzka. Thank you for these comments, to Meredith Miller, because
Mm.
one of the things Meredith says is that um, one of the unfortunate outcomes of trauma, the most obvious, is a sense of not being worth, losing your self-worth, not
Mm.
being worthy, losing your self-worth, which is what you're talking about, Luzka, here. And so part of recovering from trauma is regaining this sense of self-worth and
Great.
acceptance and self-love, self-compassion.
Absolutely,
um,
yes.
yeah. And so I could say more about that. Let me go back and see what Meredith says in general, and then we can
Yes.
tie it back to what Luzka is bringing us.
Okay.
So Meredith also has quite a story of abuse in her
Yes.
childhood, and physical illness as well. And she says trauma is not a life sentence,
Hmm.
that it presents a choice. That's why I began this live stream with a visualization presenting that choice, because I think we have that freedom. We have that, we are presented with that juncture. Do I heal from this and go through what it takes to come out the other side, or numb out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And unfortunately, many people choose the latter, and maybe are not realizing they're choosing this, of using entertainment, using
Mm.
substances, using all kinds of distractions to numb and not feel our feelings. Why? Because we've not been taught or been in supportive environments that help us be with our feelings, and making it okay to feel the way we feel. And many people have not been exposed to all the healing modalities that are available today. And Meredith, she shared some of that with us, how blessed we are at this time of history, of how many tools we do have, new ones, ancestral ones, technological ones. Like,
Mm.
there's so many ways that we can move forward in this path. And what she says is that when we do choose this path of healing, we start to shed layers of wounding, and that's when we can actually access our soul purpose. And we discussed, that one thing is declared purpose. When you declare something rationally, oh, this is my purpose, I wrote it down on a piece of paper, it sounds really nice. With a soul purpose, which is something you just feel in your body, in your gut, in your whole being. You're propelled by an energy with a clear sense of, this is who I am and this is what I'm about, and I show up with everything I am, with that contribution. I am that contribution to life. I am that.
Mm.
So it's completely beyond your rational mind, because it's like who you are. And that is accessible to people once we have shed those layers. And it's a lifelong path. It doesn't happen from one day to the next. But the more you shed that, the more you show up with that soulful contribution to life.
Great. And I would like to also add about Meredith Miller a couple of things. One, the aesthetics of her talk were so beautiful. Like, she had this setup and it was so calming. So there was so much light coming from the space where she was speaking. And then she was talking about near death experiences she's been through during her young time, during her adolescence. And she's speaking about it so naturally, right? And she's also talking about how trauma is stored in the body.
Mm-hmm.
So throughout all of our lives and some of the sessions, we have talked about how connecting to your purpose has so much to do with tuning into your own body, intuition, your gut, your inner voice, your messages, the messages that you channel, that you receive. And in order to reach that state of receiving and connecting so powerfully, there's got to be a cleansing as well. And that cleansing also has to do with the healing of the trauma that is stored in our bodies. So sometimes from the rational mind, we want to go to that place where we declare the purpose, yet our body still finds triggers or is triggered and brings up these feelings of fear, guilt,
Mm-hmm.
feelings of being caged, perhaps, that are not related to the circumstances, but they are inside of our bodies. So, how we
Yeah.
really need to address that first.
Yeah. And I love the question that Carmen has brought us.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share how trauma impacts our current relationship with money? Perfect question for what Meredith brings us, because um, trauma keeps us in our survival mechanisms,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our nervous system is still wired to react and to defend. And one of our primary traumas, um, in many cultures, but I will name the Latin American culture where we faced poverty, or ancestors faced poverty. So there's a trauma of scarcity, and there's also a trauma of this very class structured society. The classist, is that a word? Um, clasista. um, where people are also traumatized deep down of not belonging. So there's a lot of trauma from my perspective around this, and that will inhibit our ability to tune in to something deeper motivating us. So using Luis's model, Luis is here. I believe he's still here. There's different levels of quality of our motivation. So we can be motivated from the survivalist instinct of I need to make money, I need to have status in society, I need to be someone here, and that can take over our whole life. And at one point we can ask ourselves, wait, but where is my soul? Where are the things I used to love to do? Where is my joy? Because at the end of the day, we're not totally fulfilled by these pursuits of just making money, or just like being part of that social group or that one. Um, so that's one answer I can give. The other answer I can give is that when we shed these reactive, when we shed these tendencies, we can relate to money in a cleaner way, not from this survival way, but from a point of view that's more spiritual even. I've been reading a lot about money and spirituality, and there's a way we can relate to it as energy and as an expression of, the abundance and bounty that is part of life, part of nature, and that the more I contribute to life, the more life contributes to me, and money flows freely. And also how when I express my purpose, it's so satisfying to give from that heartful place, that soulful place, and receive money for what you're doing. It's just so satisfying because you're doing something that comes from your heart, and you're rewarded. um, so I think also abundance is something to work on. Maybe in the next expression of purpose ages, we can have a whole theme of purpose and money, or purpose and abundance, because the more I grow, I realize that money and abundance is just a natural expression of our purpose, and of reciprocity with life, versus maybe some limiting beliefs that we inherited from religion, culture, school, whatever, that, oh, I will only either live a life of purpose or have money, like making
Mhm.
it seem like you have to choose one or the other.
Like it's conflicting, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Great, Anna. And I would like to chip in with something for Carmen here as well, a short message that comes with her question. And it's that we're always having a relationship with ourselves, and that relationship is projecting onto every single other relationship that we have. And that brings me back to some of the things that Luz Karime was mentioning, the feeling of worthiness, feeling worthy, feeling deserving. And when there is trauma stored in our bodies, we're also emanating from a vibration of lower frequency emotions, and we are conflicting with the energy of abundance, and we are
Yes.
not allowing ourselves to tune into the energy of abundance,
Yes.
which also has to do with money. It's different than money, and in a way it encompasses money. So definitely there's a big relationship between how we're experiencing trauma and the vibration that we are emanating to the universe in order to attract whatever we want to attract, whether that is money or any other form of abundance.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, Anna. So we have Luis who's saying money should not be pursued, rather pursue giving and the right type of prosperity will ensue. I'm totally in accordance with that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Luis. And we have one more talk to summarize, one more session of today's agenda to summarize, and that will be Paul Levy's Evil and the Path to Purpose.
Yes. And thank you, Carmen, for your kind words.
Yes.
Very encouraging. Paul Levy is a world expert on the phenomenon of Wetiko. I'm so blessed to have him as part of this summit. He has many books on the phenomenon of evil, and we might have grown up in not thinking evil exists, or not talking about it really, but when you read his books, you realize that Wetiko itself wants us to be blind to it. Evil doesn't want us to look at it. So I think the most responsible thing we can do, I think, is to look at evil straight in the face. And from all his research, he says every spiritual path sheds light on this phenomenon, and gives you tools to address it, to work with it.
Yeah.
And he himself has gone through an intense spiritual awakening from perhaps the strongest trauma of all the speakers. He clearly has faced it. He was hospitalized in a clinic, with diagnosed and medicalized, and you can listen to the whole story, and from there he becomes the healer that he is. It's amazing. And part of the gift he has to offer humanity is an understanding of that phenomenon of evil, not to scare us, but to understand our power. That's his main message. Understand that we're so powerful as human beings to transmute evil, and that we live in a quantum universe. And the more we work on our own shadow, and our own the shadow that we have, because let's not think of evil out there. I mean, there is, of course, evil out there, but we also have shadow and darkness inside. And the more we are able to embrace it and transmute it, the more we're able to see and open our eyes. And we have quite the conversation about how do we encourage more and more people to open our eyes and develop that capacity to see life as it is, without just not looking, right? And what does it take for people to have that capacity? I think we would coincide that it takes spiritual development. That's why we have a whole theme, a whole day dedicated to that. And how does that relate to purpose? Well, he says that evil is a very repressive force, and that we all have this very strong critic inside, don't we? This judge. Sometimes we're on our own worst enemy, and that's part of the evil mind virus that runs around. It's non-local, as he calls it. Non-local meaning it's not just inside you. It's a part of the big mind. It's part of the collective mind. He calls it that reality is a dream. So it's like the big dream. It's part of the big dream.
Yeah. For me, Anna, today's sessions, all of them are extremely insightful and deep. And Paul Levy's, for me, is the my top one of today. And he is wonderful. He is so real, so realistic about himself and the world as well. And he's been through psychiatrical institutionalizations, and he speaks about how the world has this blindness, as you were also talking about, that the real virus is blinding ourselves. and there is like a self-blinding virus that it's also talked about in many religious traditions and many sacred books. And he has this big picture perspective of everything, and he's also so real about how he's healed trauma and he's still healing trauma, and trauma is also happening all the time. Like that just
Mhm.
brings me to this idea that just as purpose, it's not a one-time destination, like we reached and that's it and now we're here and that's
Mhm.
all. Same happens with trauma. It's never like we have reached a point of ultimate absolute healing, because there's always the potential and the possibility of many more things happening in the world that might be traumatizing experiences for all. So how this purpose healing, it's also like a life works there. And really, if you're tuning into this live right now, I would really highly recommend you to register and access these talks, because particularly this one is quite challenging to hear in a way, and also deeply connecting to something from a place of humanity, relating humanly to him and to all of these sages.
Mhm.
So that's what I have about Paul Levis. He's not so much on social media, but shout out to him wherever he is.
Yes, Carmen just asked an important question, and with a comment, and she says, "Evil or shadows gets her thinking about forgiveness." Absolutely. Um, when we face our own shadow, the only way, first of all, we can face our own shadow or the shadow of humanity or the shadow of another person with skill, with maturity, is with a lot of compassion, right? Otherwise we wouldn't even look at it, or we would reject ourselves, we would reject another. So forgiveness, compassion is what allows us to even look and be with the shadow, be with these darker parts of us,
Yeah.
and to realize, or to try to comprehend the mystery of what is that darkness that I have inside. What is it trying to tell me? I've been studying the gene keys for a year and a half, and what it's a big path of being with our shadow. It's all about the shadow. It's all about facing the darker parts of you, and it's a path of contemplation, of being with your darkness and contemplating it, embracing it with with love, and that is what transmutes it. And again, that's precisely what the message is. We have that power. It's as if our bodies, the human bodies, and this is a big realization I had recently, the human body is
Mm.
an alchemical vessel to transmute things. So we've been giving with all these darkness and all these materials, dark, dense materials that we can transmute. We have that capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have here other comments also from Carmen: unconditional love, no judgment, spiritual path. And from Jill: compassion, forgiveness, and love are the ground we can stand on for this unfoldment. How
Hmm.
beautiful, how beautiful. All of these words coming through, already linking us to the topic of spirituality.
Yeah.
And really, just before we wrap up, just want to say that the Purpose Ages Summit reminds me of this non-educational methodology. There is this, non-formal education methodology that is called a human library, where you go to people with experiences and listen to their life stories, and engage with them on a very personal level. And really, this compilation of talks reminds me of this non-formal education activity called the human library. And I want to invite people to check out the social media here on LinkedIn. We are broadcasting on several channels, but I'm referring especially to LinkedIn, where we have shared all of the biographies of the Purpose Sages that are part of this first edition of the Purpose Sages Summit. And there you can read about them, and you can Also, build your own actual library of books, because many of them are published authors, and
Yeah.
there you can find which one of them you resonate the most with.
Great, great, Stefania. Thank you for bringing that up. That's right. A very high percentage of our speakers are authors.
Yeah,
That says a lot about their commitment to their topics, their commitment to purpose, and bringing out their important ideas in the world. Another thing I wanted
yes,
to say about Paul, and that
yeah.
has to do with this moment, which we're having all these great comments. You and I are here. We feel the energy around us. We have a great team. Paul, something that Paul says is that it takes a village to hold space for our trauma and our healing path. It takes a village. So, one invitation I have for all of us is to strengthen that village, that community that we have around us, so that we can walk our healing path into a deeper expressions of our purpose. No matter where you are in your path of purpose, and you might already have a clear purpose, there's always more. There's always more
Mhm.
healing we can do to go deeper. And let's look at this. I'm saying this also to myself. Let's look at this as a beautiful mission that we have in this life to heal, so that we shed these layers, we shed these wounds, and come out with a even more open heart, and a more soulful presence. There's
Yes,
always more,
that's
says Dina. That's right.
Dina here. Hello, Dina. This is wonderful. And yeah, I want to just one more thing about Paul's propositions about evil, and is that many spiritual workers and also people creating content about spirituality and trauma, they are so much focused in the light work. We're going to
Yes.
be light workers, and we're going to vibrate high, and we're going to be walking beings of light in the human experience. And this is something I keep on saying: if we were our souls wanted to be beings of light, they would probably be somewhere else in a different dimension, not experiencing with a physical body what it means to be human. And feeling trauma is part of what it means to be human, and facing evil and facing the shadow and grieving through the collective energies as well that are
Yeah.
very much proposing us to grieve, is part of the human experience. It's not only about the light. Definitely not at all. It's the inner union that Meredith was also talking about.
Beautifully said, Stefania. Beautifully said. And we'll
Thank you.
talk more about this in the day of in about spirituality, because there's the transcendent um, movement of enlightenment, going upwards, being more elevated, but then there's the immanent, going
Mhm.
downwards into your soul, and into the healing, and into the darkness, and that also is part of the human spiritual path, but it has been neglected. We'll talk more about that on day 6.
Yes, I feel like purpose and spirituality is going to be one of those topics that we will really enjoy, that our audience will be very much interested in learning more about. And tomorrow, because spirituality goes on Saturday, spirituality goes on Saturday, which is your birthday. And I love that. So, yeah, but tomorrow, which is also, I'm going to bring it up, a full moon for those who also enjoy following the moon cycles. We're going to talk about purpose and adult development. And Anna, would you like to give us an introduction of what adult development is, to get a little bit into that topic? Because I think a lot of people think about development as something that kind of stops at some point of our lives. So, what do we refer to?
Oh my God, this is one of a big blind spot for so many people, that um, we adults have stages. And the reason why so many people are not connected to their purpose, it's because they are somehow stuck in a stage and not being able to move forward. And one of the reasons, guess what, is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Trauma is the leading cause, I would say, along with physical impairment, that we don't move further in our human development. Um, and perhaps there's also the lack of resources and mentorship and support that might also inhibit us to move forward. But the fact that most adults don't have an understanding of the stages of development is a big problem, because um, we are not taught in our schools and our universities, what should we aspire to as adults to keep growing, to keep developing. That said, there's a growing number of people who do know, about things like spiral dynamics,
Mhm.
things like the Keegan model of development. And there's so many out there, but I thought it was important to educate the public on this important understanding of the human path and how it's connected to purpose also.
Oh, this is amazing. Carmen is saying she's 75 years old and in full bloom as I continue to grow, develop, and become this person I deeply desire to be. Big hugs,
Beautiful.
Carmen, to you.
Oh, that's
So
great.
great. Yeah. A lot. Thanks a lot for being here and sharing your thoughts on this. And as a person I hold very deeply and I love a lot, says, I am quite impressed but not surprised that we took and we almost took a whole hour today summarizing trauma and purpose and also introducing some of the other topics. And as I have been saying in these lives, all of them are so intertwined. It's not something we can really separate. So thanks a lot, Anna. Is there something else you would like to add before we finish today's live session?
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for holding space for this conversation. I really hope that this topic is brought up more and more in our families, in our communities, in our organizations. Not to pinpoint, oh, you have trauma, but more to support each other through our healing journeys and create the conditions so that together we can heal. Because as many of our speakers said, it takes a village. We need all of these modalities of healing. We need each other, we need nature,
Hmm.
and we need to together recuperate a sense of self-worth. Like Luzca was saying, that this is the first thing we need to bring back, and we need each other for that, right? To feel loved, to feel belonging, to feel part of something. So yeah,
Yes.
thank you for holding space. I'm hugging myself and I'm hugging all of
Yes.
us here, because this is not an easy conversation. Thank you for being in this conversation.
Yes, I also want to say thank you to everyone watching us live or as a replay for their courageous and committed act of listening to these words, and from your active listening also contributing to the healing
Yeah.
of the collective and the healing of the individuals wherever they are in this human experience and in this beautiful planet Earth. Thanks a lot, Anna, for bringing together these amazing people from several corners of the world to share their experiences in this first edition of the Purpose Ages Summit.
My deep pleasure. And as Luis says, shalom, peace,
Mm.
good
See.
night.
Good night and see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Bye bye.